Peter B. Collins.
Peter B. Collins. News and comment. It's Friday, January 11th, 2019. The free flow of information and our freedom of speech rights are under constant attack. Yesterday, we reported to you on the investigation conducted by Max Blumenthal and his colleagues that has revealed Britain's murky, secretive integrity initiative aimed at combating Russian disinformation with disinformation created by British spies. And today, we lead with an important report from the scrappy independent media outlet Mint Press News. And what it reveals is something that advances the interests of corporate control and state control of free expression, and in particular, efforts to crack down further on independent media like Mint Press News and this independent podcast. It is really troubling. So what Mint Press reveals in an article bylined by Whitney Webb is the existence of a new organization called Newsguard Technologies. And Newsguard is going to police the media and offer ratings about who's credible and who ain't. And the arbiters of these standards at Newsguard we'll get to in a moment, but they are the usual suspects in corporate media and government. And I want to applaud the work of Editor-in-Chief at Mint Press, Manar Mohawish. She is a very strong-willed, younger, at least younger than me, media figure. She's based in Minneapolis. She is a Muslim American who always wears a headscarf, and I find her to be a great leader on these issues. So what is reported here is that Newsguard is funded by and deeply connected to the U.S. government, neoconservatives, and powerful moneyed interests, all of whom have been working overtime since the 2016 election to silence dissent in America, and in particular targeting independent media. Newsguard, by virtue of its deep connections to government in Silicon Valley, is lobbying to have its rankings of news sites installed by default on computers in U.S. public libraries, schools, and universities, and they are working with Microsoft to get it embedded in Android systems and in future operating systems provided by Microsoft. So Manar Mohawish says that Newsguard contacted her and asked her questions about Mint Press News, including some comments that were blatantly untrue. And in the article, they show how, for example, here is the Newsguard statement about Fox News. It gets a green light and a check mark. It says this website generally maintains basic standards of accuracy and accountability. And then it's got a kind of promotional plug. The website of Fox News Channel, the most watched cable and satellite news channel in the United States, created by Rupert Murdoch as a conservative counterpart to the three major broadcast networks and CNN. Well, I don't know when this little box was created, but as of mid-December, Fox News is no longer the most watched cable channel in America. So it's not even up to date. And one of the people who sits on the board of Newsguard is Tom Ridge. Remember him? George W. Bush's first Secretary of Homeland Security, former governor of Pennsylvania. The guy who devised the color-coded threat warning system that became a huge joke? Well, this is not too different from that. So, the article continues to tell us that when Newsguard releases a new rating of a particular outlet, that rating automatically is updated at computers that have installed its news ranking browser plugin. And, of course, for tablets and smartphones, there is a companion app. So this is a very troubling development. It is a big brother move. And so far, Newsguard has not contacted Peter B. Collins, or to my knowledge, I have not been evaluated by them. But here's another ranking report that gets a green check mark for the Voice of America, which is a known government propaganda outlet. What does Newsguard say? Voice of America reporting is governed by the VOA Charter, a U.S. law that commits VOA to reporting that is accurate and objective, represents all segments of American society, and presents responsible discussions and opinion of U.S. policies. I mean, what bullshit? Now, you and I don't listen to the Voice of America. But I can tell you that I don't know a single progressive commentator who's ever been invited to participate in a talk show on the Voice of America. And so this is a very dubious ranking. And, of course, the Russian media outlet RT gets a red box with an exclamation point. And it's tagged as the website of a leading Russian government propaganda effort. In addition to its broadcasting channels, RT was previously known as Russia Today. So, who is behind all this? Well, Stephen Brill and Louis Gordon Krovitz are the co-CEOs. Now, I've never met Brill, but I followed him. He published Brill's Weekly. He had a journalism critique publication for a while. And he has some credibility. He's kind of a corporate tool, but I wouldn't consider him to be capital E evil. Krovitz, who helped found Journalism Online with Stephen Brill years ago, worked at Dow Jones and at the Wall Street Journal, where he was executive vice president before Murdoch purchased the paper. And he also serves on the Council of Foreign Relations, the American Enterprise Institute, and the Heritage Foundation. So you can trust that his influence on Newsguard is going to be just right down the middle, searching for the truth. Let's see, I mentioned Tom Ridge. Who else is there? Oh, Mike Hayden, the former head of both the CIA and the NSA, not simultaneously, of course, and now a principal at the Chertoff Group. Michael Chertoff was the Homeland Security Secretary following Tom Ridge, and after he left government, he cashed in by creating a company that gets a cut of all of those airport scanners that I avoid every time I hit an airport. So I'm linking to the Mint Press News story. And I encourage you to take a close look at it. I printed it out. It runs over 20 pages. But it shows the influence of corporate public relations firms like the Publicis Group. It shows the influence of government contractors like Booz Allen Hamilton. And to me, it shows that Big Brother has arrived to crack down on the corners of the Internet where people like me lurk. And we haven't heard a peep of objection. Now, I hope that this story will get much more attention, and we need to demand from our government officials that these kinds of fascist efforts to silence people, to limit their free expression and their First Amendment rights, claiming that they publish fake news or, whatever other allegations are used to perform this, we must resist every way we can. Now, I'd like to see Newsguard take a look at the coverage of yesterday's whopper, what I consider to be Trump's biggest, most brazen lie ever. And that's saying a lot. This is a compulsive liar who, the record shows he's uttered thousands of intentional falsehoods. And as we reported yesterday in McAllen, Texas, he said, during the campaign when I would say Mexico's going to pay for it, obviously I never said this and I never meant they're going to write out a check. Now, if you read his comment carefully, he's not explicitly saying he didn't say that Mexico was going to pay for the wall. He's trying to wiggle out of how they would pay for it. And of course, he infers that the rewrite of NAFTA is going to be so great for the United States and throw off so much extra money that it will pay for the wall. Now, this is a big crock of shit. And the New York Times runs a fact-check report on it and says, yes, it's false. But the Democratic leaders who are in this grudge match from hell, the brinksmanship over the wall and the government shutdown, I don't understand why they don't call out this lie. I think strategically it's a great way to try to separate Trump from many of his mob followers and Twitter followers. because this was the comment that many people voted for Trump on. Yeah, it was the pivotal point that he made during the campaign. And for him to try to soften the commitment, walk away from it, and claim that, gosh, everybody knows that Mexico's not really going to directly pay for this, I consider this to be egregious. And it's hard to imagine why our Democratic leaders are not seizing on this opportunity that Trump handed to them. Back during the debates, you remember, they always put Trump in the middle of the stage. They gave him the most airtime, asked him the most questions. They used other candidates to react to stuff that Trump had said. There were candidates up there saying, hey, call on me, I'm running too, and you haven't even asked me a question yet. And one of the most offhand but profound statements that was made came from little Jeb Bush. At one point, somebody whispered in his ear, and he repeated, Donald, you're the chaos candidate. And the chaos is so evident today. The latest is that Trump is kind of backing away from his threat to declare a national emergency to fund the border wall. Instead, they're talking about squirreling away money from hurricane relief in Puerto Rico, Florida, and Texas, taking money from the relief for the wildfire impacts here in California. And that's robbing from Peter to pay, I don't know. And this just creates so much confusion. And we don't see any real path forward at this point. Tomorrow will be day 21. Today is the first day federal employees who were affected by the shutdown didn't get a paycheck. And tomorrow it becomes the longest government shutdown in the sordid history of American government shutdowns. And Trump just keeps talking about these emotional, exaggerated comments of the crime that is committed by people who storm over our border in caravans, and trying to drum up this crisis that exists really only in his own mind. And while we're talking about the exploitation of this, I just want to mention, it really offended me that the brother of the dead police officer, Officer Singh, who was killed during the holidays in the little city of Newman, California, he made a traffic stop of a DUI suspect who pulled out a gun and killed him. Turns out the man was undocumented. He'd been in the country for at least 14 years. Trump lied by saying that, implying he had just come over. He implied he had come with the caravan. These are flatly false. And last night, I have to tell you, I feel this is very tragic, and I'm saddened by this news, but just 60 miles east of here in Davis, California, a female police officer who had just completed her training, she's 22 years old. She went to an incident of a traffic accident, and somebody pulled out a gun and shot her dead. And I'll bet you $5 right here, and I'll only pay off one person if Trump ever mentions the name of Natalie Corona. She died in the line of duty. And I deplore killing of cops. There is no excuse for it, and I don't rationalize it in any way, shape, or form. I'm critical of the excesses of law enforcement and how cops cover for bad cops. But there is no justification of the killing of an officer in the line of duty in this manner. And the reason Trump will never talk about it is because the suspected shooter, who was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound a couple of hours later off a standoff at a home a couple of blocks from the original incident, is a young white American. Nope. Trump won't notice that. Doesn't help his narrative. So the idea that they can siphon off money from the Corps of Engineers, from disaster relief, I mean, why don't they just go steal it from Social Security? That's how our government has done it in the past. And I do fear that ultimately the Democrats will be forced to cave. But if they do, it will lead to endless extortion from Trump and from Republicans in the future. Because if you can throw a temper tantrum, if you can continue to throw up new, expanding and shifting demands and shut down the government and refuse to negotiate until you get what you have cherry-picked, well, that is such a dangerous precedent for this nation to embrace. Now, I do concede that the law is vague, and his ability to declare emergencies of various types is pretty broad. And it would be tied up in courts and lead possibly to a Supreme Court ruling. But the other big factor here is nobody can trust Trump. He says, if you give me $5.7 billion, I'll open up the government. But then he adds, 18 other elements to it. Mike Pence got together with Lindsey Graham and some other Republican senators. And every proposal they made, Pence said, oh, no, Trump won't go for that. But nobody really knows. And Trump changes his mind more often than he sprays his hair. At one point, he was talking about doing something for the Dreamers, and that was the ugly deal that Democrats at one point had agreed to, your wall for relief under the form of a DACA law. And so it is really messy, and it's unclear who will blink first. But I do think that fundamentally, you cannot negotiate with an unprincipled extortionist like Trump. There's some good news. Beto O'Rourke and a Republican Congressman, Will Hurd, both from Texas, they have visited the Tornillo tent camp, the prison camp, that was set up earlier this year. And Tornillo apparently is finished, because Will Hurd tweeted, I just talked with the management of the Tornillo facility. The last kid just left. This tent city should never have stood in the first place, but it is welcome news that it will be gone. And Beto O'Rourke also tweeted, the last child has left Tornillo. It's good for these kids and their families. It shows the power of people who showed up for them and shared with the rest of the country that we were locking up immigrant kids for months at a time. You made this happen. Nearly 6,200 minors cycled through Tornillo since the camp opened in June on a dry, sprawling patch of borderland outside of El Paso. Now, it's interesting because I listen for about 10 minutes every day to Rush Limbaugh on my way to the secret studio, and he keeps it's fascinating what he's doing. He's saying the media, the drive-by media, what he calls the corporate media, keeps saying that I'm the one who made Trump do this. And he revels in the idea that he has so much influence over Trump. And he replays clips from his own show back in December about how he was hammering Trump over the possibility that he was going to whiff on the shutdown and sign the continuing resolution that was passed by both houses. But there are cracks. I grew up in Cincinnati, and the Enquirer is a hopelessly right-wing rag. Now, they have called the government shutdown a buzzkill. Why? Well, Cincinnati and northern Kentucky are big brewery towns. After World War II, there were some, I think, 40 breweries in the tri-state area. And now there are all these microbrewers and breweries. And apparently there is some issue that the government isn't approving new beer labels. That's a pretty trivial matter. But for the Enquirer to step away from Trump is notable in and of itself. Also, the Dallas Morning News hammered Trump for waging a potentially unwinnable fight that focuses on crime, questioned his moral credibility, urged him to offer a deal that protects immigrant children in exchange for the wall. And even Brian Kilmeade, who kisses the ass of the president on Fox and Friends every day, he said, well, you know, this declaration of a national emergency to fund a wall would be a disaster in the big picture, show us being inept, unable to govern, and could open the door to liberals using that in ways that Republicans wouldn't approve of in the future. A good piece from Mehdi Hassan at The Intercept today about Mike Pompeo's speech in Cairo yesterday. He really displayed ugly American arrogance, and we commented on the speech a bit here yesterday. But Hassan cites Shadi Hamid, a senior fellow at Brookings, said this is one of the worst foreign policy speeches I've witnessed from a senior U.S. official. Called it cynical, petty, incoherent, small, and, well, silly. And BBC Middle East Bureau Chief referred to the speech as simplistic and that its theme was the goodness of Israel and the evil of Iran. And then Mehdi Hassan goes on to write his own fantasy speech that he wished that Mike Pompeo had delivered. Also at The Intercept today, Glenn Greenwald has a great piece about how Democrats, according to polls, are becoming more militaristic and pro-war than Republicans. And I have commented on this as an observation, and now we have some data to confirm. I love it when data confirms my opinion. 49% of Americans support Trump in his tweet to withdraw from Syria. Now, that's been countermanded by the adults in his room. But when you break it down, those who voted Democratic in the 2018 midterm election, only 28% support withdrawal from Syria. 54% oppose it. Why? Because Trump has suggested it. And when you look at people who voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, only 26% support withdrawing the troops, 59% oppose it. Trump voters overwhelmingly support withdrawing by 76 to 14%. Russiagate has been a major driver as Democratic leaders and the corporate media have really shifted public opinion. And look at the people who were just diametrically opposed to the wars of George W. Bush. They were kind of neutral on the drone wars of Barack Obama. And now they want to continue wars that Trump says he wants to end. That is a very, very troubling development. Every day I pause for a moment to thank the people who support my work here at the Peter B. Collins Podcast with your subscriptions. People like Jim McHugh, Andrew Harnack, Robert Litweiler just renewed his annual subscription, and Joe Clarici kicks in $10 every damn month. You can do it too. Just visit peterbcollins.com, find the menu tab, then click on Become a Subscriber. You hit the sign-up page, and you can make your choices very easily. And if you don't like PayPal, use the U.S. mail. Communicate with me at Box 150, 660, San Rafael, California, 94915. More of that chaos that I referred to as the American military announced that they've started withdrawing hardware from Syria, but no troops so far. Two Defense Department officials said Friday that they're confused too, but the word is that some movement has been detected. A new study is very troubling. It shows that ocean temperatures are rising at a rate 40% faster than the UN's climate panel estimated 5 years ago. We're in deep trouble, and we are burning more carbon despite that. Yesterday on Capitol Hill, there was a weird secret meeting, not open to the public, with the Secretary of Treasury, Steven Mnuchin, being quizzed by members of Congress about why he authorized the lifting of sanctions on 3 companies controlled by Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska. Now, I got to scratch my bald head over this one, too. And as you know, I don't believe the Trump-Russia narrative. I don't believe that Putin selected our president. But it is weird the way Trump treats Russia and Putin. And it is bizarre that they would target lifting sanctions on one specific oligarch and his entities. Mnuchin didn't have any good explanations. Now, the Democrats can't divulge what actually was said. They can only talk around it and about it indirectly. But he ducked their questions. That was very clear. The president of South Korea, President Moon, says that he has received communication from Kim Jong-un after Kim's meeting with President Xi Jinping in Beijing the last few days. And Moon is optimistic that there will be another meeting between Trump and Kim. I don't oppose that, but Trump approaches those meetings without any organized or structured approach, and I really don't see that it'll make much difference. Yesterday, Nicolas Maduro was sworn in for a second 6-year term as the president of Venezuela. And I have to say that he presides over a country that is in economic shambles. That is due mostly to the low price of oil, not to socialism, which is what all the neocons and capitalists want to blame. And the U.S. is openly trying to destabilize the Maduro government. So when he talks about being in a war and under attack, that is not an overstatement. Next week, we'll see Parliament vote on Brexit. It doesn't look good for Theresa May. We'll be watching that one closely. The new racist governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, maybe with a little racist guilt, he announced today the pardon of the Groveland Four. 4 black men who were accused of raping a white girl in the summer of 1949. They've all been exonerated, and I'll at least give the benefit of the doubt to new Governor Ron DeSantis, who was deeply racist in his campaign just a couple of months ago. And finally, I want to recommend Kevin Gostola's story about how Iowa's agriculture gag law has been thrown out as unconstitutional. And this follows laws of similar nature in Idaho and Utah, where they claim that if you bring a video camera or a journalist to a farm where they're violating the law or brutalizing animals, that it's a crime. And I'm glad to see that the First Amendment is seen as still effective in cases like this. Thanks for listening to my daily news and comment podcast. I hope you'll share it with absolutely everybody. You'll find it on YouTube. I'm Peter B. Collins.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails.